to Risky Bitness. It is April 2020 and we are knee deep in the coronavirus pandemic. So what better time than now to play some video games and make some videos. I hope that everyone's quarantine gaming is going well. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy and finding some ways to entertain yourself. I know I'm doing my best over here. So I figure now's a great time to kind of go back to the well and grab some games that I really love and do some quick videos about some of my favorites. And one of my all-time favorite games is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Man, what a fantastic game. This one came out in 1987 when I was just 6 years old, and I still play it all the time. It's one of my absolute favorite games ever. So you're probably asking, hey, what's so great about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Well, I'm gonna tell you. You certainly don't play Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for real boxing action. While this is arguably the most popular boxing game of all time, it has very little to do with actual boxing. I am a fan of boxing, I've even trained in the art myself and have a deep love of the sweet science. Considering how bad boxing games tend to be, I think it's pretty safe to see why this one is so popular. For this reason though, I do have a healthy appreciation for how big a name Tyson was at the time, and how influential he is to the sport of boxing even today. He was a master of close quarters boxing. Tyson was trained by Cus D'Amato, progenitor of the peekaboo boxing technique. Tyson's technique is still taught and practiced by boxers today, and knowing even a little bit about his style makes it impossible to not appreciate how talented and dangerous a fighter Tyson was. When I was growing up, my dad was a huge fan of boxing, and we'd watch together. My dad definitely didn't get Mike Tyson's Punch-Out though. Far from an athletic contest of strategy, speed, power, and footwork, Punch-Out is all about rhythm, pattern recognition, and timing. The protagonist, Little Mac, is so tiny that he has to jump to punch with much larger opponents. I don't know who the commissioner of the WVBA is, but he certainly doesn't understand how weight classes work. The opponents are cartoonish characters and often caricatures. They're mostly aged poorly as a collection of off-color ethnic jokes. We have the weak Frenchman, the bizarre Pacific Islander, the drunken Russian, the narcissistic American. It's definitely tongue-in-cheek even for its time, and the kind of over-the-top cartoonish presentation is probably the only thing that keeps it from being taken too seriously. Oddly enough, due to a surprising and unusual business arrangement, Mike Tyson is waiting to fight you at the end of the game. Well, up until 1990 anyway, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. I have to reiterate that this was a huge get for Nintendo. Tyson was absolutely the most popular athlete in the world at the time. Nintendo Tyson could knock you down with a single uppercut, just like the real Tyson did to his opponents in the ring in real life. Tyson was so dominant that there was no such thing as a main event fight with Tyson. He just knocked a guy out, took his money, and went home. As goofy as Punch-Out is, the gameplay is surprisingly deep. While there is a specific strategy to beat each boxer, over 30 years later, speedrunners are still finding all kinds of crazy ways to defeat these opponents quickly. I'm often surprised when I see a new way to make an opponent see stars and gain a powerful uppercut, or a new way to get a one-punch knockdown or bypass a special technique entirely. When I was playing this as a kid, I had no idea that it was adapted from 2 arcade games that came out previously. I didn't learn about this until later on, and I can honestly say that as interesting as those dual-screen arcade cabinets were, they don't hold a candle to the original NES game, not by a long shot. As you fight through each of the circuits and gain new championships, face new rivals, and remixed versions of old ones, each fight becomes more and more challenging until you face Tyson himself. After each championship fight, you witness the iconic training montage and receive a new password. The passwords never change, and the famous Mike Tyson password is committed to memory for many of us. There's even a password that unlocks a secret circuit. It just contains regular enemies in a different order, but it's still fun when you get bored of the regular game. After all, how can you possibly lose with Carl Winslow in your corner? While all of the fighters in Punch-Out use a specific pattern, they're all programmed in such a way that they try to throw off the player's rhythm. In this way, it's actually quite a lot like real boxing, where manipulating the opponent's rhythm is a critical part of the game. In addition, each opponent has a special move. They're always absurd and often border on magical powers. Learning how to counter them is crucial to your ability to complete the game. Opponents always telegraph their punches, and if you know what to look for, you can dodge and counter, but more advanced opponents will mix up their punches, so you'll have to react prematurely and get hit with something you didn't expect. This actually does sound quite a lot like real boxing. Really, when I'm sparring in the gym, I'm just trying to throw my opponent off base. Throw a jab, throw a jab, throw a jab. Wait a minute, throw a jab, throw a jab, throw a jab. Wait a second, throw a jab, throw a jab. And then when he's expecting another jab, you throw a hook or a cross. Many of the fights do seem downright unfair at first, but you'll find that once you know the right trick, there's no challenge Little Mac can't overcome. What a lot of people don't seem to know is that there were multiple revisions of this game. This is something that sometimes happened in the pre-World Wide Web days, when additional pressings of games would often contain bug fixes or slight gameplay or performance tweaks. These were mostly subtle, but there are more noticeable changes. There's a camera flash, for example, on later versions where during the bald bull fight, when he does his bull charge, there's a camera flash to tell you when to punch. And there's a revision later on where Glass Joe will stay down when you knock him down at the 42-second mark, whether it's with a face punch or a body punch. The most important revision is the 1990 re-release, which had a major change. Mike Tyson's name and likeness had been removed from the game following some legal trouble Tyson had been in. Nintendo's family-friendly image would certainly be hurt by being associated with Tyson at this point. For family-friendly content-related reasons, I won't go into detail here. You can Google it. In any case, the final boss is a reskin of Tyson called Mr. Dream. The fight's exactly the same, but he looks more like The Rock, I think, than Mike Tyson. Can't you smell what Mr. Dream is cooking? Fans of the game generally revile this version due to the absence of Tyson, but it is the version that has the most gameplay tweaks and fixes and is therefore arguably the definitive version. There have been 2 direct sequels to Punch-Out!, Super Punch-Out! On the SNES and Punch-Out! Wii. They're both a lot of fun, but for me the Wii game feels more like a throwback and a nod to the old game than a game of its own. It's fun, but it doesn't really capture the magic of the original. Super Punch-Out!, on the other hand, gets everything right. Just like the original Punch-Out!, it relies on timing, rhythm, and patterns to challenge the player, and it offers a host of brand new fighters to overcome. There are wacky and cartoonish characters with special moves, always trying to mess up your rhythm. Luckily, on both the SNES and Wii games, the characters are no longer stereotypes played up for laughs. They're definitely handled in a much more mature way. Punch-Out! Is a game you can learn to play in an afternoon, but mastery of it can take a lifetime. It's still a challenge to defeat Tyson. I've only done it twice as of the recording of this video, but it's always a lot of fun to try. After over 30 years, there's still a large community of players finding new ways to overcome the challenges of Punch-Out!, and I'm always challenging myself as well. I hope this explains why I think Punch-Out! Is one of the greatest games ever made. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and if you'd like to help the channel, please leave a comment down below. I am doing a little bit of a change during the pandemic. I'm just not appearing on camera. Mainly I'm doing it to see if a version of the videos without me on camera is a little bit more popular, or whether the audience would rather see my face on camera. Is it something that you feel helps you connect to me and makes you want to watch my content, or do you feel it's kind of distracting you from the core of the content, which is the gaming itself? Let me know in the comments whether you would prefer that I appear in the videos or not. I'm still kind of debating how I want to go about changing the format going forward. Thank you very much for watching this video, and until next time, game over.